Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of You Don't Jazz No Berries. I'm your host, Lady Karus, and with me is the Impact Playa. Please say the Playa. If you joined us last week, we went over an introduction to Is There Really Freedom of Speech? Today we're coming to you to dig a little bit deeper into our rights. What are they, and how can it help us by knowing them in the long run? Why is this topic so important in the world today? Well, you're about to find out. Let me pass this thing over to my man's Impact Playa, and he's going to give you the lowdown.
Thanks for the live, Lady K. In the last episode, we really brought some interesting information to you all. We talked about what the amendment is and why are they put into place. We also went over some history about the first printing press created and perfected in Mainz, Germany in 1450. Then we went over the first newspaper, the first television set, and when it was developed. We also covered censorship and corporate censorship. We also went over the reasons that we're here. Don't believe me? Then I encourage you to check out our website that has the latest content free of charge. Are these news outlets being for real, or is it an elaborate stage for fake news? I'll let you be the judge. We also went over the First Amendment is supposed to cover guaranteeing our freedom of expression by religion, freedom of press, freedom of speech that allows citizens to assemble peacefully and petition their government. Then we covered what does it actually doesn't cover, like any actions that would harm others, like a threat to make or distribute obscene materials, to permit students from printing articles in school newspapers over the objection of school administration, just to name a few. One thing from the last episode that really stuck with me is how many people don't seem to understand censorship. One time I shared a post on Facebook, and the same day it was taken down. Then if someone does something like this on that very same platform, they can report you, and when they report you, you won't have access to your account for a few days. This is another form of censorship that is taking away our freedom of speech. Whether this is related to the government, no one will ever know. The last episode we covered some cases that directly involved the freedom of speech, and then the freedom of expression was also talked about as well. If you didn't see episode 4 of You Don't Jazz No Berries, then we highly encourage you to go back and watch it, for it has interesting information about our freedom of speech. I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Lady K, as promised, to go over the articles of the United States Constitution.
Thanks, Impact. So I'm going to start with some information on the U.S. Constitution, and I'm going to focus primarily on the 7 articles. So let's get some more details on what the articles are. The articles are said to work to establish the branches of the federal government and describe what power they have over us. There were actually originally 395 articles in the United States Constitution, which is a lot. The first article, which I'm going to go over here, is the legislative branch and defines what their job entails. Their job, to sum it up, is to make the laws. The legislative branch has 2 different chambers, the House of Representatives and the House of Senate. And these 2 both make up the House of Congress. Congress is a legislative body that holds the power to draft and pass legislation, borrow money for the nation, declare war, and raise a military. It also has the power to check and balance the other two branches of the federal government. Article number 2 is the executive branch. They manage the day-to-day governmental operations, and one agency that's included in this branch is the Department of Treasury. And the head of this branch is the President of the United States. Article number 3 is the judicial branch. This outlines the powers given to the federal court system. This states the court of last resort is the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Congress has the power to determine the size and scope of those courts below it. All judges are appointed for life unless they resign due to bad behavior. Who knew? Article 4 is the states. This is where the relationship between the federal and state government is defined. The federal government guarantees a republican form of government in each state, protects the nation and the people from foreign or domestic violence, and determines how many states can join the union. It also makes suggestions that each state is equal and should respect each other's laws. Article 5 is the amendment. This one states the future generations can amend the Constitution if society requires it. Both states and Congress have the power to start this process, which we'll cover shortly. Article 6 is the debts, supremacy, and other branches, which actually determines that the United States Constitution and all the laws made from it are the supreme law of the land. It states that all officials, whether members of the state legislatures, Congress, judiciary, or executive branch, have to swear an oath on the Constitution before being placed in office. And the last and final article is Article number 7. This article gives the detail on all of the people who signed the Constitution and represented the original 13 states. Now that you have a breakdown of the articles, let me pass this thing over to Impact, and he can give you some insight on the Bill of Rights and the amendments it contains.
Thanks, Lady K. Now let's dig right on in. Let's start with the Bill of Rights and when the Bill of Rights was established and what the Bill of Rights actually mean. On September 25th, 1789, the U.S. Congress tried to establish 12 amendments to the Constitution, and 10 of these amendments were approved by 3/5 of the state's legislation on December 15, 1791, and these 10 amendments make up the Bill of Rights as we know today. It is said these 10 amendments will guarantee the civil rights and liberty for each individual, such as the freedom of speech, the freedom of press, and the freedom of religion. Amendments are the way by which any change can be made in the Constitution. This can be for adding, deleting, or modifying an article like we discussed in the previous episode. Now let's go over amendments 2 through 5. Shall we? The Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. This amendment states that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of free states, which allows people the right to keep and bear arms, and this shall not be infringed upon. This amendment is regularly debated because some argue about who should actually have the right to bear arms. As you can see, it wasn't intended for everyone to have this right, since it's a topic of discussion in today's society. The Third Amendment states that no soldier in a time of peace shall be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, even in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. This amendment basically states that if America is not at war, the government can't make people house soldiers. The Fourth Amendment states that people have the right to secure their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure. The person shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued but by obtaining probable cause. The Fourth Amendment is supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things that needs to be seized. In simpler terms, this means the Constitution prohibits unreasonable search and seizures. It also states a judge must approve a search and seizure warrant, and to do so, there has to be probable cause. This is a questionable one due to the no-knock warrants that certain states mandate. So what happened to Breonna Taylor and so many others is downright illegal. But we'll save that topic of discussion for another episode. Then we have the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment states that no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on imprisonment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land of naval forces or the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subjected to answer for an offense to be put in jeopardy 2 or more times of life or limb. Nor shall the person be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against his or herself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. Nor shall private property be taken for the public use without any just compensation. This is where a lot of people say, I plead the Fifth, which means you have the right not to answer police questions both in custody or in court if it can incriminate yourself. This right is protected against self-incriminating and extends to states and local judicial systems. Now let me pass it to my girl, Lady K, and she's going to go over the rest of the amendments.
Thanks, Impact. We're going to go right into the next amendment, which is the Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment states, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Basically, this is supposed to guarantee the rights of the accused, so they can have a public trial without delay, a lawyer, the right to a jury that won't be one-sided, and give you the right to know who is actually accusing you of these crimes, and show you what evidence they have to support their claim. Also, they have the right to be defended by a lawyer, even if they can't afford one, which we've all heard this before. This is that supposed due process, but some might say it's questionable, especially if you're getting an attorney that's court appointed. Next, we have the Seventh Amendment, which states, in suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in the court of the United States than according to the rules of common law. So this amendment is supposed to mean that the civil cases or lawsuits that are based on a disagreement between people or businesses have a right to be decided by a jury in a federal court. The amount of the lawsuit just has to be more than $20, and after the case is settled, then it shouldn't go back to trial again. Then the Eighth Amendment states, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. This amendment is supposed to protect us from being forced to pay them racks for bail. But if we are accused of a crime, along with getting cruelly punished by the government, then we have the Ninth Amendment, which states that enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. This is actually said to be one of the most confusing amendments, and you can see why. And it's actually the least referred to. I had to think to myself, what does this even mean? I read quite a bit, and in simple terms, I found was this: all rights not listed in the Constitution belong to the people, not the government. So that's interesting. So the rights of the people are not limited to just the rights listed in the Constitution itself. And we'll have to come back to this one too, as it seems questionable to me. I'm sure if you're like me, you want to know what other rights we have that we may not even know about. And how is the government using that fact that we don't know about them to their own advantage? Maybe there is a reason why they worded it this way. Now, the 10th Amendment and the last amendment I'm going to go over today, it states the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by its states are reserved to the states respectively, or the people. This is supposed to define the rule between the federal government and the states. It says that the federal government has only the power we give them in the Constitution, if you can believe that. These powers include the power to declare war, to collect taxes, to regulate interstate business activities, and those are just a few of the main ones. This one really makes me think, why was the federal government given so much power over us? What were people's mindsets really like back then when they created this? Before the Bill of Rights was put into place, there were very few limits on the power of the national government and how they used their power against the people. Before this was put into place, the government had basically no restrictions and they could do as they pleased. But is that really different from what it's like today? Now, here's Impact with some more information you might find interesting. I know I did.
So, from what I read, it would take quite a lot to change our rights. But the Bill of Rights, sometimes referred to as the Declaration of Rights or Charter Rights, is a list of the most important rights to a citizen of America. The purpose is to protect those rights against infringement from public officials and private citizens. The Bill of Rights may be entrenched or unentrenched. An entrenched Bill of Rights cannot be amended or repealed by the country's legislative branch through regular process. Instead, it requires a supermajority or referendum to do so. This is a part of the American Constitution and has special procedures applicable to constitutional amendments. The Bill of Rights that is not entrenched is a normal statute law and as such can be modified or repealed by the legislative branch as they see fit at will. Although it would be hard to change the actual amendments themselves and the rights that we are given, there's always seemed to be a loophole. We the people need to understand justice and corruption goes hand in hand, and our rights are being infringed upon every day. The craziest thing about it is that the government can restrict our rights at any time. They have to demonstrate that it has a compelling state of interest in which the proposed restriction seeks to protect. One example is the case which legalized a woman's right to obtain an abortion. The Supreme Court said that a woman's right to privacy outweighed the claimed state interest in the matter, or so they say. Another fact to mention about the Second Amendment is nowhere in the Constitution does it says what type of arms that we can bear. New fully automatic weapons or weapons that can reload automatically and fire continuously with one trigger pull have been banned for civilians in the United States since the Firearm Ownership Protection Act of 1986. Also, 7 states have put this law into place banning assault rifles like the AR-15 and the AK-47. The states that includes this law are California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York. The District of Columbia even has the same prohibition on assault rifles. With all these loopholes in place, it kind of makes you wonder if our rights are even safe at all. If you try to protect yourself, will you just be shining a light on yourself for the government to try to find a way to incriminate you even though you're in the right? If these rights can be so easily taken away or changed to serve the purpose of the government, then I ask you, who are these rights protecting? And why do we even have these rights to begin with? So, 2 years ago, back in 2019, I got a disturbing the peace charge. But, I must admit, I know a lot about the law, so I kind of weasel my way down to this. But, okay, so I was placing a wager on some 2K, 19 at the time. This man came in my house, he helped me buy the game and everything, and we started gambling on the game. And I started taxing his ass. Excuse my language, but it is what it is. Like, I started taxing him, luxury tax. Like, I had a 50 burger, 40 burger, 30 burger. Like, the most I win by is no less than 20 points, And of course, like any competitor, that kind of got up under his skin. So one day when I was maximizing his tail, putting 40 points up on that game, right? He got mad and stormed out of my house. Then he calls me up and he says I'll owe him money for the game. So I'm like, all right, why don't you come back to my house? And basically, when he came back to my house, I was in the process of waking up and putting on my clothes and stuff like that. So, I wasn't having it. And then, things got heated. And basically, by me explaining how Buddy was wrong to even ask for the game back and even ask for money about the game, he got up, broke one of my coat hangers and said, man, we could settle this shit right now. And I'm like, all right, well, whatever, And upon doing so, I couldn't find my shoes at the time. So I was like, looking for my shoes. And by that time, Buddy, he got down the street a little ways. Then once I found my shoes, I made sure to grab my taser and grab my hammer, right? And I went down the street to go confront him. Confront. I already know some people going to be like, oh, well, that's stalking. But no, I confronted him because he said we could settle this shit right now in his own words. Okay, excuse my language once again. So, of course, I went out there, taser, hammer ready, right? And once I got there, Buddy started making a ruckus. The first thing I had to do, excuse my language again, was, hey man, shut the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? And I'm talking to you guys like this right here. Like, I had a little growl in my voice, but that's because, like, I must admit, talking to you all, yeah, I was ready to throw down, But I controlled myself, and, you know what I'm saying? He was like, is that a strap? Is that a strap? So, in order not to get a concealed weapons charge, which is also another loophole out there, I revealed my taser and also I revealed my hammer. And I said, nah, this ain't a strap. Strap meaning little pistol, little gun or whatever, little revolver that, you can take out, whatever in the case may be. So I was like, nah, this ain't it. And I was like, you know what? I want to know why you was acting like that. You know? And of course, Buddy wasn't trying to answer my question, no way. So he was like, call the cops. And, I stood my ground. I stood firm and stuff like that. Because once you say that, then to actually flee the scene of the crime, especially if you're black, right, is probably going to be detrimental. So, of course, the cops showed up. And when they showed up, man, I tell you what, they was like, you're being detained right now. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm like, you can't really get me because, first of all, I didn't even hit him. And second of all, I'm allowed to have these. You feel me? And with that being said, right, they confiscated my weapons. Not only did they confiscate my weapons, they put them in the evidence room. Not only did they put them in the evidence room, right, they put a referendum or whatever you want to call it to the judge that they should not return my items to me after the case is resolved. Okay? So, in all actuality, they forced me to go buy another taser, which I have, more voltage by the way, and they forced me to buy a new hammer. And yes, this is a carpenter hammer, so of course, like not only am I the hammer man, but I'm actually repairing even the coat hanger Buddy just broke in my house, among other things. So, with that being said, I would like you guys to leave the comment in the bottom if my Second Amendment upon my First Amendment was actually violated.
Well, that's a really interesting story. So, my question is, I just want to ask you guys, and ask you, basically just ask yourself, do you feel like you really have freedom of speech after, what we brought the facts to your attention here? Do you feel like you really have all the rights that they say that we have? I hope you learned something from this. Like we did. So we ask you to ponder the question: So we ask you to ponder the question: is freedom of speech really free? Please visit us at our website www.theallstargang.wixsite.com/theallstargang. And thank you, and stay tuned for another episode of You Don't Jazz No Berries.